She stood beside her husband with every camera watching, but after Jasmine Crockett unsealed her marriage file 24 seconds later, Melania Trump couldn't finish her sentence. There was barely a dozen people left in the chamber when it happened to Gray. Wednesday night had stretched into early Thursday. C-SPAN had cut to a wide shot. Staffers were yawning. The few journalists still awake had half-written drafts open, thinking the hearing was winding down. Then Jasmine Crockett said 4 words no one was expecting. I moved to unseal. No one even looked up at first, not until she repeated herself louder, this time sliding a folder across the desk toward the committee clerk. The camera zoomed in slowly. Someone in the background whispered, "She's serious." Chairwoman Lynn Caro frowned, clearly blindsided. "This document," Jasmine said, steady and slurlates, "to a sealed civil filing submitted in 2021. It involves a request for post-nuptial modification by Mrs. Melania Trump while her husband was President of the United States." Now people looked up. Pui could almost hear the click of keyboards resuming, phones lighting up, heads turning. This wasn't budget amendments or infrastructure funding. This was personal presidential personnel. Man from the back of the room, New Hampshire Republican Declan Foster, started to object, but Jasmine was already ready. Petitioner Melania Knobs Trump respectfully requests amendment of the postnuptial agreements, specifically regarding asset protection tied to overseas holdings and personal estate planning. The request stems from an ongoing concern about liability stemming from her husband's political and personal affairs. You could see it. How the room shifted. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. Wasn't grandstanding. She was walking people through something that on paper looked dry. Legal filing, state protections, but the subtext was louder than anything she was saying. Melania had tried to redraw the lines of her marriage while Trump was still in the White House, and now the public knew the document was unsealed legally. Jasmine hadn't leaked anything. Followed a rarely used rule that allowed disclosure of sealed material if tied directly to a current ethics investigation. That's exactly what this was. Just 72 hours earlier, the Ethics Committee had launched a formal probe into undisclosed foreign interests connected to the Trump family, specifically property in Slovenia and Dubai that hadn't been reported on mandatory financial disclosures. Nobody expected Jasmine to connect Melania's post into it, but she did, and she knew exactly how long to pause before reading. Again, the next section detailed private meetings Melania had arranged with independent counsel in Reno, Nevada. The filings mentioned concern over being held financially liable for activities of which she had no involvement or knowledge, and more damningly, a fear of exposure stemming from her husband's disregard for legal formalities. That line would appear in headlines the next day. Evan, the chair, had trouble hiding her expression, but Jasmine just kept reading, not fast, not slow, just enough for every word to hit. Reporters in the room began whispering into phones. An aide passed a note to the chair. Someone on Twitter Live transcribed a sentence and hit send. Then, without warning, the committee feed went national. CNN cut to live coverage. MSNBC followed. A producer at Fox, unsure what was happening but sensing momentum, threw up a Chiron-breaking Melania Trump post. Op unsealed, live on House floor. Thousands watched then. Millions. Meanwhile, across town, inside the East Room of the White House, Melania Trump sat beside her husband during a scheduled press event about agricultural subsidies. The mood had been controlled. The president was doing most of the talking. Melania had only prepared a few lines. That's when a reporter shouted, "Out, madam." First Lady cared to comment on the newly unsealed court filing. She blinked, then blinked again. You could see it happening in real time, her fingers pressing a small note card. Tighter. She began reading her statement, but stumbled over the second sentence. Started again, mispronounced a word, then went quiet. People noticed. She leaned in toward the microphone again, but this time she just whispered, "No comment," and stepped away from the podium. It took 24 seconds from the moment the reporter asked until she left the stage. Those 24 seconds would be replayed on news loops for days, but the real story wasn't just in her silence, it was in who made her go silent in the first place. Clip of Melania Trump, hesitating, stumbling, then walking off, didn't just go viral, it exploded. News outlets cut it into pieces, zoomed in on her eyes, her hands, even the slight shake in her voice. It aired on every major channel that night, followed by expert panels and body language analysts scrambling to decode what it meant. But behind those 24 seconds was something more human, more complicated. She hadn't prepared for this. That day had been routine. She'd spent the morning in a closed-door meeting with the president and a team of agricultural lobbyists, then sat for makeup and wardrobe. Just like any other event, she'd been briefed about drought relief efforts and given a simple message to deliver: hop, resilience, unity. No one said anything about Jasmine Crockett or an unsealed document. Melania hadn't even looked at her phone since early afternoon, so when the reporter's voice cut across the room, she was caught between instinct and protocol. She couldn't lie, not directly, not when the cameras were that close, but saying nothing would only fuel staff tried to intervene, but she'd already stepped down. She walked straight through the double doors past two Secret Service agents who exchanged worried looks. One of them radioed someone immediately inside the press room. Energy flipped. Journalists knew they had something big. They weren't just reporting on a document anymore. They were watching a reaction, a very human, very real reaction from the First Lady of the United States. And just like that, the tone of the story changed. Now it wasn't about a line in a phalange, it was about what Melania wasn't saying back in the committee room. Jasmine Crockett didn't smile, didn't throw punches, or deliver any rehearsed zingers. She simply closed the folder, looked at the chair, and asked, "May this be entered into the public record?" There was a beat of silence before the chair moved. That was it. C-SPAN cut the feed. A minute later, the room emptied quickly, but outside on Twitter, TCHOT, YouTube, thousands of clips were already circulating. Hashtags popped up, post up. 2021 Melania walks off Crockett, unsealed. One video taken from someone watching the committee stream on their phone at a diner in Eugene, Oregon caught the moment. A server gasped and whispered, "She's got guts." Jasmine's office, meanwhile, was a blur of movement. Staffers worked phones, non-stop requests for interviews poured in. CNN wanted her live within the hour. MSNBC booked her for the next morning. Even international outlets, Germany's ZDF, France 24, were asking for statements, but Jasmine stayed put, refused every offer that night. Instead, she went home to her two-bedroom condo in Arlington, heated up leftover pasta, and sat on the edge of her couch with her shoes still on. Her phone vibrated constantly. Finally answered one call from her mother in Dallas. "You okay, baby?" her mom asked softly. "I'm fine, Mama," Jasmine replied, tired but certain. Her mom hesitated. "They're gonna come for you now." "I know," Jasmine said, "but I didn't lie." Across town, the West Wing was in damage control mode. Staffers scrambled to draft statements. Trump himself was furious, not just at Jasmine but at whoever let that filing get unsealed in the first place. "Get the damn lawyer who approved," Faith yelled in a closed-door meeting. Melania, meanwhile, was quiet. She didn't attend dinners, didn't return calls. She went straight to the private residence and requested to be left alone. According to someone close to the family, she took a long bath, changed into one of her old robes from her New York apartment, and sat by the window for nearly 2 hours without saying a word. She knew this wasn't going to go away. With following morning, every major newspaper ran variations of the same headline: "First Lady's legal move during presidency revealed Crockett forces public reckoning," and in smaller subheads, words like independence and self-protection appeared again and again. For the first time in a long while, people weren't focused on Melania Trump as a fashion figure or silent partner. They were asking real questions. Why had she filed the request? What was she trying to shield herself from? And why did it take someone like Jasmine Crockett to bring it to light? But while the nation argued about what Melania's silence meant, Jasmine knew the fight had just begun. 3 weeks earlier, Jasmine Crockett sat across from her counsel, arms crossed, tired eyes fixed on a single line in a redacted ethics report. It wasn't the kind of document that screamed headlines. It was buried in appendix, demixed into a bland audit of financial disclosures tied to the Trump family. Jasmine noticed something others had skipped: a reference to an offshore account reassignment dated May 2nd, 2011, tied not to Donald Trump but to Melania. That was odd. Even odder was that it coincided with a string of sealed civil filings in never unusual jurisdiction for someone residing in D.C. It took her team another 9 days to connect the dots. They did. It all pointed to one document: a private petition filed by Melania Trump to renegotiate the couple's post-nuptial terms, not to dissolve the marriage, a bit to isolate herself from Trump's international property liabilities. Jasmine had sat quietly with the knowledge for almost a full day. She knew what it looked like: a political stunt, a personal attack. But this wasn't about scandal for scandal's sake. Not to her. She kept thinking of the broader implications. If the First Lady of the United States, still in office at the time, had taken secret legal steps to shield herself from her husband's holdings, what did that say about the ethical state of the executive branch? "It's not about the marriage," she told her team during a closed-door prep session. "It's about the influence, the power, the fear. There were risks, of course, big ones.